CR, the Schumer
Sure,
thing?
sure. So if the audience isn't aware, the Senate passed this week the House bill that is the budget continuing resolution, or also called CR. And basically, what it is that to avoid a government shutdown, they decided that they were going to continue the funds of the previous budget with some slight altercations, and we'll get into that for a second. But basically, here's what happened. So the House passed it with no Democratic support, and then it goes to the Senate, and the Senate can't use they can't use budget reconciliation to override the filibuster. So you have to have 60 votes, and so the Democrats held. I mean, to just be completely honest, this is the most leverage they're going to have until the midterms. This is the only leverage that they had, and their choice was simple. You can either band together, shut down the government till the Republicans let you come to the table, or you can grab it's like 8 people, to vote alongside the Republicans and pass this continuing resolution. And there's a lot of problems with this, is because this is not just a funding of the last CR. Like the funding levels are not the same, and it creates what's called a slush fund. And I know, Darren, what you do for work, so I know that you know what that means. But for the audience that doesn't know, so there's a term known as an earmark, where basically money has to go to certain places. Well, whenever you create a slush fund, it kind of just goes to the head, and the head of the agency or the head of or the office, they get to kind of just pick how the money is spent. So rather than saying, you got $40 million for salary and $40 million for office supplies and whatever, it's like you just have $80 million, spend it however you want, which is very different than how we usually do things. Now, Darren, have you read anything at all about like, why Schumer caved, or like why um, the Democrats decided not to shut down the government?
I have not. I've heard, whispers that they might go ahead and try and shut it down, but I'm not sure why it never came about.
Gotcha. So Hakeem Jeffries, who's the minority leader in the House, he was fully ready to hold his caucus together and say, we're just going to withdraw support and we're going to let the government shut down. And then Chuck Schumer says at the last second, when the last candle goes out, he says, you know what? We're going to support this. And the reason he says is because, listen, in a government shutdown, the only thing that can be funded is what they quote unquote essential government, operations. Which they're like, listen, do we want to give Doge the ability to cut the VA or Medicare or Social Security? Because the executive branch in a shutdown is basically God. Like, they get to choose what to fund, they get to choose what's essential, what's not essential. And Schumer didn't want to give that power to Trump and Elon Musk, to be quite frank. And he's caught in a lot of backlash because, A, this is the only. First of all, what do you think the Tea Party would have done, Darren, in 2010? Right? What do you think they would have done? They'd have shut down the government, right?
Oh yeah, they're firebrands.
100%. Especially because at the time, it's the only leverage they had. And he's getting a lot of backlash because A, he didn't fight, and then B, there's a lot of really, really messed up shit in this bill. For one, there's a $4.5 trillion tax cut, right? It contributes $400 billion to the deficit upon what we already were projected, right? And that's under the best case scenario. That is the more likely scenario is that it's more like $500 billion, you know?
Yeah.
And they're expected to cut about $880 billion from the Energy and Commerce Committee, which includes Medicare and Medicaid. So this is a little complicated. So let me explain. So the Energy and Commerce Committee has Medicare and Medicaid, which in total is a $2 trillion budget, and Medicare and Medicaid are about 1 trillion of that. So it's about half the budget. So $880 billion is supposed to be cut from that. So essentially, there's no way to cut that agency without cutting Medicare and Social Security, right? I mean, this is just like a blatant like this 72 million Americans rely on that, you know? Like this is all nonsense, right?
Yeah.
Um here's the other thing. If they cut everything related to healthcare, they would still be $600 billion short, like from their goal. Like they have to they have to cut Medicare and Social Security. Or sorry, not Medicare and Social Security, Medicare and Medicaid. That's the only way to do it. And I know you're not Democratic like partisan, but I just want to get like your take. Like, why do you think that like Schumer would cave? Do you agree with it? Like, just whatever your take is on any of that, by all means.
Well, now that you've presented me the facts, I mean, what if I were him, I feel like I would have fought. I probably would have shut down the government, even if it means Elon and Trump might get some time to run amok. Surely the damage wouldn't be as high as, I mean, the damage from this CR sounds worse. So, than whatever I could fathom that they could do. So,
Yeah, well, his argument is that basically, listen, if we shut down the government, A, we're gonna land into an instant recession, and then Trump and Doge specifically are just going to cut everything that they can, whether that's, more Medicare, more Medicaid, more Social Security, more departments like, either USAID or like the Department of Education or whatever. Like, he's like, dude, they're just going to use this like an axe. Like, they're going to destroy everything. And AOC's point was, if they're going to do that, then there's going to be political consequences for them. So we may as well, like if they're gonna, tie the rope around their neck, we may as well let him hang himself. Like this does, and people are calling on AOC to primary Chuck Schumer, and like I think that if she doesn't run for president in 2028, then she might actually run for Senate and primary this guy, and God can only hope. God can only hope that we get some new blood in the Democratic Party.
so I take it you agree with me then that it would have been more wise for Chuck Schumer to have
Yeah, even
fought.
if you even if you take a Machiavellian approach to this, it would have been way better to block this bill. I mean, he basically voted for a cut to Medicaid and Medicare. Like, like what? Um,
Yeah. Uh,
it'll contribute if this continuing resolution goes on for 10 years, it'll contribute $4 trillion to the deficit.
whew, oh my
On
gosh.
on top of, and keep in mind, this is best case scenario. That they have like three or four different models. This 4 trillion is the best case scenario.
Oh my gosh. Man, wow, that is rough. Yeah, I do you think maybe there is maybe a Machiavellian way in which maybe Chuck thinks that, perhaps if he lets this CR go through, that all this bad stuff will be pinned on Trump, and maybe it was kind of like a cynical 4D chess ploy.
Maybe. I mean, maybe. I doubt it, though. I mean, this guy doesn't have political calculus, in my opinion. This was obvious to me. This was, he's one of the heaviest. Like, so to be a majority leader or to be a minority leader in your party, you basically have to be the best fundraiser. And Chuck Schumer has some of the biggest fundraising abilities in the Democratic Party. So I have no doubt what this was. His donors came to him and said, "Hey, you're gonna oppose this shutdown because otherwise we're gonna be losing a lot of money." Whether that's the finance sector, whether that's the military industrial complex, whether that's pharma, whether that's guns, whether that's oil, whether it doesn't matter. I'm sure they all came to him and said, "We need government money." Like,
Oh,
I
that's
have
a good point.
and I think I think that the base of the Democratic Party wanted to see some fight, and instead, this is like I said, for the next 18 months, this is the only leverage that the Democrats are going to have. It's their government until the midterms. So Chuck Schumer decided it was best to just roll over and basically give up, you know? And I can't imagine any Republican Congress in my lifetime where they had this sort of leverage to just force the other side to concessions. And they're just like, you know what? Roll over. This is unbelievable to me.
Well, I totally get your anger. Yeah, that and I think you know what, you're probably right about Chuck's motivations. It probably was a donor thing. You know, and I bet his donors also fear a recession. I feel as though Democrats shouldn't be so afraid of a recession. I mean, one time in finance class in college, I asked our professor, I was like, you know, it was during COVID, I think, or, it's like, are we, uh, or it was in the COVID era, sometime around then. I was like, are we heading towards a recession? I was all worried because everyone was talking about it. And he said, well, maybe, but a recession, all that is just 2 quarters of negative economic growth. And when you say it like that, it's like, we're talking like low percentage points, and it's not good. People are going to lose jobs, but, chances are it's not going to be you that loses the job. So, you know, you might as well just take the recession. I mean, it's
Right.
not it's not as scary as people make it out to be. I mean, you'll
Yeah, and I
survive.
think
So,
I think there's a lot of Republicans that are fine, and I don't mean like congressmen, but I mean like Republican donors are probably somewhat fine with a bit of a recession because a lot of money can be made in a recession. Some of the biggest like wealth inequality gains are made during recessions because the poor can't afford to contribute to the stock market, but the rich they can double down and you know.
oh
But
yeah, yeah, it's great for the wealthy. So, and and we've always recovered. So, I mean,
oh, for sure, for sure,
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not like,
Recessions are always temporary.
yeah. So it's, yeah. The Democrats, if I were them, I just wouldn't be I wouldn't be so scared of a recession. I mean, it's really not. I mean, it's a big deal. It's going to hurt people, but grand scheme of things, I mean, not that big a deal.
Well, I'm not super worried about a recession as much as I'm worried about like the fact that like the instability from this is just it. I just think it's absurd, you know. And not just that. I think that like cutting Medicare and Medicaid specifically is just it's just a horrible idea. Yeah, like I said, 72 million Americans rely on that. And that's just Medicaid. That's not even Medicare. That's just the number I could find for Medicaid, you know?
Oh yeah, it's incredibly concerning, and I imagine people will die because of it. Uh, so
Right.
hope it all works out. Hopefully,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like it, but
Right.
yep. Well, wish the Democrats had a little more fight in them, but
They
what
need
can
new
you
blood.
do?
They need new blood. They're gonna get new blood. There's gonna be they have to. Either that or die as a party.